Welcome to part 2. Still building this. I'm using a very nifty wood carving tool I bought in Tokyo. This is in the model kit section. I'm finding it very useful for gouging out the tips of the sprue that I glued into the holes. It's a lot easier than using the hobby knife, and I can actually get quite a bit of strength behind it, and it slices this really strong crappy styrene like a knife through butter. Then I've got the second shit job of sanding them down within those little areas. That took a while. Wasn't a lot of fun. There we go. That's the dry part. I've just dipped it in some water and now I'm doing the wet part. The advantage of wet sanding is you have quite a high grit of sandpaper. The water clogs the actual sand pieces and it acts like a finer grit, and on top of that it stops the actual sand from being clogged. So it's really nifty. Buy wet and dry sandpaper and try it out. Now I'm using my Dremel and the cut-off blade to cut a small chunk out of my styrene, and this I think it's 2mm styrene that's going to be the third wall to the diorama. I'm also going to use a series of skinnier pieces of styrene sheets and strips and whatnot to scratch build the door and the hanger wall. I've made the cut and now I'm using a sanding stone to actually clean up the dags a bit, and I'll probably file it and sand it a bit. I think it's out of the way. I probably didn't even clean it that well. Who the hell knows? There we go. I'm just taking the excess plastic off. Too bad, or quite sorry, it's not close enough to see it. Going around my very messy workshop looking for tools. You're going to see more of that. This is a very trendy file I also bought somewhere in Japan. I think it was in Osaka. Yeah, can't have enough files. I actually wouldn't mind buying even more. I bought a really nice one, but I can't, in Tokyo, but I can't find it. It's in one of the boxes I brought back. This is the single part Tamiya putty I was talking about before. Really good for seam lines and fixing up scratches and gouges. I do this process several times. It doesn't work in the first go because it's a solvent-based putty. You can thin it down, but I've had very little success in that, and what it does is it attaches to the styrene or plastic, filling the holes and making it flat. The bad part is once the solvent evaporates, it actually shrinks. So you either have to put excess putty and file it smooth when it shrinks, or you're going to have to do this process a couple of times. But overall, it's very smooth, very easy to work with. It's a fantastic putty. It's what I prefer to use. Other ones are either too dry or too thin. This putty is a little thin when you start using it straight off the bat, all brand new, but it does harden up over time if you keep the lid on, and once you have it for about 2 weeks or use it for 2 weeks, it gets quite nice to use. So this is just to keep all the surfaces nice and smooth when I paint it. It'll be like there was no evidence there was an actual parts attached to the plastic. Later on I'm going to be sanding it down, re-putting it a few times, but I probably won't do that on camera. I think I'm also filling in a piece I probably damaged with the Dremel. Sorry, that beeping's because I'm recording this at work. I'm a technician, so there's a lot of computers and whatnot monitoring equipment. I won't go into any detail about that, sort of confidential. Once the putty's put on with a toothpick, I like to smooth it out with a cotton bud, or I believe you guys call it Q-tips in the States. Yeah, it's a shit that my piece falls. I think it happens to everybody. I've seen it on other videos. We're all a bunch of klutzes in the modelling game. Yeah, it's not too bad. If you're sensitive to solvents, it's probably going to be a bit on the nose for some of you guys. I don't mind too much. It's nothing too dangerous. Using the side cutters to take the pegs off the a bit of scaffold. I'm planning to attach those two using leftover sprue pieces, and I'm not happy with the sprue or the holes in the actual scaffold, so I'm going to fill all of them and drill a custom hole with a fairly nifty tool you guys will see later. The flash marks being from the result of the mould. You get a great big plastic line that you have to trim off. It's all over these Kotobukiya pieces. Their quality is nothing like Bandai, but this is real scale modelling. This is the grit of it. We love this sort of stuff, so you have to trim this fine line that travels all around the piece that you can't quite see on camera, and then file it down. If you just file it without trimming that plastic line, it's just going to fold over and reappear when you start painting. You have to be careful when you're cutting it off. Just cut off the majority of it, not close to the part, or you'll damage it, unless you got balls or you're skilled or something, and if you're prepared to fix it with putty. Once you clean all these dag bits off and the actual nubs from the sprue with a knife or a carving tool, you file the whole lot all around the surface, and pretty much it's ready to glue together. This is just like if you're building a scale model kit, not so much a Bandai snap kit where they try to hide all these things so you can snap it together with ease. Once you venture outside of Bandai, I think I've said this before, it's a whole different world of quality and a lot of work you have to do it yourself to save on money. Yeah, I think we're zoomed in a bit more. You actually get to see that fine line that is known as flash. This is a very, very, very long, painstaking job, but it's a part of the hobby. We all love it. That's why we do it. Once it's all finished, all cleaned up, looking great, painted, fantastic, one piece, and some wanker comes along and he hasn't cleaned anything off his kit, you know you've put the hours and the work into your kit. It's a labour of love. You don't buy 100 kits and snap them all together in a couple of weeks just for the sake of having 100 kits. You spend months or weeks or whatever on the one kit. It looks fantastic, it's custom, it's there, and you'll love it, and it'll stand there for the test of time. I think I'm up to the sanding part of the flash. The dry stage, I'll probably do the wet stage later off camera. This particular job probably took me days to hours, so this is just a highlight of it, not too exciting. Very simple, like I said before. You cut the imperfection off as much as you can, you file and sand the rest off. Any damage occurs, you putty it up. It does get very hairy when there's detail involved. Now you can see comparing it, the surface that I've cleaned, which is on the right, and the untouched flash and marks and crap that's on the left. And yeah, it's not too much of a bad job, is it? Here's a heap of parts that I plan on using to glue on all the bits of plastic and the loose weapons I'll have around. This is the Bandai bazooka. It's probably a Zaku bazooka, I'm not 100% sure. I'm using the extra thin Tamiya cements to glue the two pieces together, and then I'm probably going to putty it up and primer and paint it. You would follow this exact stages that I'm doing to this bazooka tip. Any two-part piece to a scale model kit. Very simple, very straightforward. The cement pretty much softens the plastic surface. You put the second surface on top and it bonds together into the one piece. It's not so much a glue, but a substance that fuses two separate pieces of the same material to become one. You'll learn a little more about this in my glue tutorial, and yeah, feel free to ask any questions that you don't quite understand. Unfortunately, it's not going to fill the seam lines itself.